Welcome to Blueprints. I'm Bodine Sanders, your producer and host. Joining me today is Kelsey Nicole Nelson, a rising superstar in the sports media industry. She's an anchor, a reporter, a producer, and the co-founder of books Breaking Borders. And she's the host of Listening In with KNN on Fox Sports Radio. Welcome to Blueprints, Kelsey. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's so good to see you again. How lucky am I you came on my show and now you returned the favor and put me on yours. I know we're going to have a great conversation today. So thanks for having me.
Oh, no. You're more important than I am. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Again, my goal, as we had our conversation, my goal was to have and interview more female guests this year. And I accomplished that. I had more female guests this year than last year. So let's jump right into it. As I ask all of my guests, please share your positive perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion based on the industry in which you work, which is the broadcast, print, online media industry. Share it with the audience.
Yeah, well, once again, excited to join you. Glad to be representing for the ladies, which I know you will have many more, Bodine. And I love that you put that positive perspective around diversity, equity, inclusion. I hate right now that it's become politicized and kind of had a negative connotation because it shouldn't have that. That's the exact opposite of what diversity, equity, and inclusion means. For me, my positive perspective is honestly my story. I grew up in Montgomery County, Maryland. For my high school, I was the first four-year graduating class, which means they took all the rival high schools and put us into one. So you talk about diversity, that first year, my ninth grade year, and that led me to University of Maryland, a super diverse school, which I got to meet so many people of many different backgrounds. And again, I grew up in the DMV area, probably one of the most diverse areas in this country, because everybody comes to our nation's capital, right, of Washington, D.C. I went from Maryland to Georgetown, and now I teach at George Washington University. And why I share that is because each university, I think, has really helped to shape me and the people that I was around, which means a lot to me. And as I relate it and parlay it to my industry, all of my education translates into my career as a sports reporter and a sports journalist, and it's growing. Like, it's now nice. When I first started, but it was not as common to see people that look like me all the time in the industry. But now, I love that many of my mentees reaching out to me are young ladies of many different backgrounds, shades, colors, religions, that want to enter the industry, which is promising. That's actually why I started two of my internship programs to get more diverse voices in media. It's why I am the vice president of our Washington Association of Black Journalists chapter here, and membership chair. And I do a lot with diverse initiative and journalists here in Washington, D.C. And also, Bodine, it's why I know I need to keep that role. I know I need to be that voice in the locker room. I need to be that voice on the sideline. I need to be that voice in the studio. So my positive perspective is that, we're here, the glass ceiling, it keeps getting kinks in it and clicks from our heels and everything else that we're wearing, our sneakers that the young women are wearing, but there's still work to be done. And I think that's why I'm excited to be in this field, because I know it's just going to continue to grow with more and more diverse faces. We have a brand new women's network that was launched by Whoopi Goldberg that everyone has been in my DMs about. I was just at the Washington Spirit game, Bodine, a sellout game, 19,215 faces coming to watch the Washington Spirit in the playoffs. So my perspective is that it's going in the right direction, and no matter how people try to impede it off its track, DEI will prevail through, as it has throughout the course of history, because we have freedom riders that will not let it derail off track.
Especially when you're talking about sports, right?
Yes.
When you're talking about sports and the sports industry, that's a different conversation that they're having in the business world. When you're talking sports and the sports industry, everyone understands you're all on the same team. In order to make it work, you all have to be on the same page, right? And it starts at the top with leadership, and it goes all the way down to even folks in the parking lot, the security, everyone involved in the sports industry. Am I right? Am I making sense here?
You are completely right. That's what got me into sports, right? That beauty of diversity within the industry. Because to me, nowhere else can you be with different people of such diverse backgrounds. But for that time together, you're getting along or you're talking trash with one another, right? To the other team. I think that's why to me, sports is that universal language, right? No matter what country you go to, sports in some way, shape, fashion, or form is being played, watched, or covered, right? And that's what brings us all together. That's why we all get excited, Bodine, when it comes to the Olympics or the World Cup, right? Like that's something that unites us, right? And you think about it, what sports touches. It symbolizes music, right? Music is integrated into sports. Culture is integrated into sports, right? We're able to bring our identity, right? And I know people don't like to say this, but it's true. Politics is also into sports. Sports have been politicized. So it touches on so many different diverse things of our culture. So you're exactly right. Like you said, when you're on that team, your common goal, your objective is to win. And you don't care how you get there, but you're going to find a way to work out whatever differences there are to achieve that goal or mission, because you know that's why you are all there. And that's what I kind of really love. It's kind of that military mindset, right? You got to achieve that mission. I know Veterans Day just happened and passed, and I think that's a great way to kind of look at sports. And then even look, military integrated into sports, right? What do? We sing the national anthem, right? We have the presentation of colors. Again, where else do you get this diverseness of richness all in one place?
Well, listen, when you talk military and sports, you've got the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, football teams, because it's football season. So let's stay there. They're doing very well, having really good, as a collective, a really good football season. But listen, we could go on all day because we love sports. We know the power of sports. And that's why it was very important to have you as a guest on my program. But let's delve a little bit deeper in your origin story, right? What, other than what you already shared with the audience, how did you fall in love with sports? What got you involved in sports? At what age? Give me the origin story.
My gosh, that's easy. 2 words. My father, Joe Nelson. Anybody that knows historically Black colleges and universities, that's the world I grew up in. My dad is a very proud graduate of Grambling State University. Let me say it right, Dad, the Grambling State University. So I grew up, with black and gold in the household, Doug Williams, Eddie Robinson, knowing those stories early on. And like I said, I grew up in the DMV. And I like to think of us as a sports capital of the world. So I came up at a time when Hoya paranoia was real, Bodine, when everybody's rocking the Georgetown starter jackets, and Georgetown basketball was really setting a culture trend, right, for society, right, in the world, Big John and that story. Maryland, I was here when they won the national championship, right, in basketball, and here for those Maryland Duke rivalries, going to College Park. How I really got into sports, though, my parents, we got free tickets to games, as kids, as a kid for me and for my parents. And that meant a lot, right? So I always tell people, even though I sat all the way up at the nosebleeds, I was just excited to be there, right? I was in the presence of greatness and always loved those stories. The WNBA is something I've been going to forever, right? Since the beginning. Grew up going to Washington Mystics games, watching Elena Beard and Coco Miller. And then I was an athlete, right? So I was competitive. I played on our Boys and Girls Club flag football team, which is why I'm so excited about the growth of women's flag football right now. I played basketball and volleyball. I did soccer early on. I was always an athlete, right? I was always active and competitive. And again, that came from just, sitting on my dad's shoulders at games, going to Ravens training camps early on. And then sports, again, being integrated into my family. All my aunts went to Jackson State University. So you know about HBCU sports, you know about HBCU homecomings, you know how real that gets. And so that was me as a child consuming all that in. And I wanted to be part of that narrative, right? I wanted to be that storyteller, and kind of how everyone calls me KNN as a play off of CNN, Bodine, going into sports, because they said Kelsey would give us all the sports news. So they essentially named me my own network. And that's kind of how, the KNN initials stuck with me. And, I've just been privileged and parlayed that my story has continued, and sports has opened up, so many, vast doors for me. Because now not only am I practicing sports, I'm teaching sports to the next generation. So I'm thankful for, for my parents for, really seeing that sports played an early indicator for me early on, and allowed me to play so many sports, and took me to games, took me to practices, were my biggest fans in the stands. And now, it's parlayed into me covering and really being a voice in DC and of DMV sports, and also on a national and international scale.
Well, let's talk about HBCU experience and the PWI experience, predominantly white institution experience, because you and I both, that's why we not only share the same birthday.
Which is crazy. 7/17, best day in the world.
Right? But we also share, but we're different in age, but we share a lot of experiences.
Yeah.
As you know, just like you, my family had more females go to attend college and graduate college than the males. So my family had, Bethune-Cookman, FAMU, Spelman, Atlanta Clark, all those Southern HBCUs.
Right.
And then I was able to see that experience and gain that experience. And then I started my career at Cheyney University, the oldest HBCU in the United States, right? Right. And then I transferred to Villanova. You have a unique story as well. You had that HBCU experience based on your dad and your family, but then you attended and now involved in PWIs. Talk about the positives and the similarities of both those environments.
Yeah, I'm privileged, that I had a chance to experience both cultures, and right. So I didn't go to an HBCU, but again, growing up in that culture, and then I speak often at Howard. I've spoken at Bowie State, right? All the HBCUs here in the DMV. The other day, I was at Howard celebrating their 1974 soccer championship team, and I was called an honorary Howard alum. So I will take that with pride because their stories matter, right? And I think the experiences. You think about someone like Coach, Eddie Robinson, who does not get his fair share for how many games he won and what he did for so many athletes, that went through. Doug Williams, who I think, not enough people know, as we're rooting on the Washington Commanders right now. In their season, before Jaden Daniels, there was a Doug Williams, right, who was leading story. And, I think kind of the integration. So kind of, I'll tell a little backstory, how I became a fan of the Ravens here, because I come from an HBCU family who loves sports, who loves culture, who loves our history of Black culture and Black excellence. I knew that the Washington team was the last team to integrate. And then also my family having a problem with the former name, right, being offensive. So, that being the last team to integrate an offensive name, and that happened to be the team I actually ended up covering, right, in the long run, being here in the DC area. And I think what that illustrates is to know where you're going, you have to know where you come from, you have to know the history. And I think that's kind of how it begins for me. Why were HBCUs created, right? I had the privilege of knowing that, again, because my family, again, from the Deep South, my grandmother living not too far from where Medgar Evers lived. So civil rights has been integrated into me for a very long time, right? Since I came into this world. HBCUs and, my parents, essentially, my dad knowing, he wanted to go to HBCUs because he saw the greats that attended before him and wanted to be part of that legacy and history. And I think that's what I was able to take, Bodine, to my PWI, right? Knowing who I am, not having to assimilate. I think that was the great thing about the University of Maryland. I was able to do journalism and be in classes, honestly, not all the time with people that look like me, but different backgrounds, which was great to integrate into that. But actually why I became a professor, because I never got to have a Black woman journalism professor. And so talk about representation and so knowing what I could represent. But I think also kind of the full story 360, again, knowing I was in that room because there were stories not being told, and I had a chance to attend a top journalism school to be able to make sure those stories were told, right? So I think that's what was important to me. So I think for me, a lot of times, if you don't go to either school, you won't have that experience, but you can integrate yourself into that. So I had been going to Howard homecomings, Bodine, since I was since I was 5. My parents would take me to that, I'd be going to Howard games. And it was important, again, because they wanted me to know, my people, where I came from, who I was, right? And then there's a beauty, right, in seeing people that look like you. But also my parents didn't want to shut me off, right? When I grew up in school, I grew up in a very diverse area. It was 25% everything, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic. And that was really my world, so for me, seeing other cultures was my normal. So when I got to college, it looked honestly much like where I grew up. And then I was able to join a Black sorority. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, right, at University of Maryland. I joined the Black Student Union. So there was other ways I could still integrate, into these different groups. I joined the National Association of Black Journalists in college, right? I was still able to integrate myself into places and spaces, but also, again, still not be kind of shut off, where I was still able to interact with other folks because, Bodine, I knew to work in sports, I had to be able to relate to everybody, right? Sports stories. I don't know who's ever going to be on the other side of that microphone, but somehow, some way, even no matter how different we are, my strength and my power and why I like to believe I've been in this, this industry a decade is because I'm able to relate and connect with whoever is across from me, right? I felt that when you came on my show, and I feel that with every single person that comes on, because that's me doing my due diligence and my background and my homework. And so I'm thankful that I'm able to bring both worlds that have made me into me. It's why one of my internship programs is specifically geared, Bodine, and this is through Listening with KNN, to all college students who want to work in communications, media, or PR. And then my other internship program is specifically for HBCU students. It's called the HBCU Connections Program, because again, I saw firsthand from not only speaking at the schools, but having mentees that have reached out to me from being in that culture, that unfortunately still opportunities aren't leveled, right? The playing field still isn't leveled. So it's very important to me to not just talk about the issue and not to talk about the problem, but to be part of the solution, which is why I specifically launched that for HBCU students across the country to participate in my virtual internship program to get hands-on experience. I think that's kind of how it relayed to me. I understood both sides. I understood the problems that exist on both sides. And I like to think through me that I am trying to be a warrior and a fighter to try to, I know I can't do it alone, and I know I can't address them all, but as much as I can, start to really, again, start to make progress to solving those problems. And that's a large reason why, again, I do a lot of work with diversity here in the DC, Maryland, Virginia areas to make sure that all voices, because sports represent all of us, and the reporters that tell the stories need to be reflective of that, right? They also need to be reflective of all of us. So each day I'm fighting and pushing to make sure that representation, that diversity is in the room, and not just in the room, but being listened to, heard, and that their opinions are being taken and valued. So I think that, like I said, both those kind of parts of me, both those identities are why I push and prevail today. And that's what motivates me and why I'm so high energy in all that I do.
I grew up born in the mid 60s, grew up in the 70s watching Jane Kennedy.
Yes.
Right?
From the area. We love us some Jane Kennedy over here.
At least in my eyes, from my memory, the first Black woman who was a sports sideline reporter, analysis, whatever her proper title was, but she was the first, right? And then there were more slowly, but there have been more women after that. Obviously, I remember Robin Roberts on ESPN, right? And then there's Lisa Salters and so forth and so on. So the women of color have paid their dues. They've made their faces known, their skill sets known, and the representation is there. So again, my goal was to interview more women this year, but also more women from specific, backgrounds, and I've accomplished that. So again, talk about your leadership and your experience being a woman of color, being in this sports industry. And again, the WNBA, the growth of all these sports, women's sports. You just mentioned it. I heard about Whoopi Goldberg being part of that all women's network, so to speak. Yes. So share with the audience what you know.
Network. Yeah, first off, I love this time that we're living in, where people have finally come to realize the greatness of women's sports, right? And they've been here a while. Maybe folks are just hopping on the bandwagon, and there have been people who have covered them, who have played them, but I think now they're just beginning to get their fair due. And for me, it's been just fun to kind of see this growth, continue, and to be part of it. Soon I'll be making my debut as a color analyst covering college hoops here in the DMV area. So I'm so excited, moving from that sideline reporter role into the analyst seat. And like you said, you've named some pioneers and goats. Jane Kennedy, a trailblazer, right, in this industry. You talked about Robin Roberts, Lisa Salters. You can go Pam Oliver. For me, Carrie Champion, Jamel Hill, and all these names. But still, there's so much work to be done, right? I'm in the DC area. We used to be Chocolate City, Bodine. Some folks still call it that. But if you still call it that, you haven't been to DC lately, and it's okay. Come take a trip. Come visit us here. Again, gentrification is real, right? It's happened. But in sports talk radio, it's few and mighty, right? It's sad. It's sad. Again, I've been here a decade, and not much has changed. And so there's still a lot of work to be done. And why I really stay here, Bodine, is because I feel like as the nation's capital, we have a chance to model, right, what it should be, right? You talk about not just the most powerful city in the country, most powerful city in the world. we're able to do that. I'm so thankful I've been able to build my career here. But again, sports talk radio, there's not enough black woman voices. I challenge you to cut on your local sports talk radio show and tell me how many black woman voices you're listening to. In sports media, we are seeing more on a national landscape, but again, there's still a minority in the business, and that's a problem. You talk about sports like the WNBA, who is majority, largely Black women playing the sport, and Black women who are putting their voices to causes and attention. Why should the media not reflect that, right? So meaning, why aren't there more voices that look like them in the locker room, interviewing, telling their stories? And so that's why one of the things I am is mentorship chair, National Association of Black Journalists. We have a mentorship program. And so, I'm so thankful to be able to be there, because one of the great ways we've seen to get more diverse voices in the space is to make sure they have something that can show them the ropes, right? Show them the way, who has done it before you, right? And I think that's really, really important. And the mentorship program is just one example, right? Like I said, for me here, with our WAVJ chapter here in DC, specifically, I have the opportunity, specifically as membership chair, to work with a lot of the different colleges and universities around here. And it's always young women coming up to me looking for an opportunity, Bodine, or way in, because they're not getting the same opportunities or privileges as some of their colleagues. And so, like I said, I challenge you, for every success story you have or you see out there, go on social media and you also see a struggle story. And that's my why. That's my why. That's what pushes me. Me and you met on LinkedIn, Bodine. I get so many LinkedIn messages from young women, not just here in the DM. After you today, I have 2 more interviews, student journalists profiling me for their projects, for their stories, right? And I'm privileged and honored, that they want to be like me, but I know they're going to be better than me, right? And when they go on, but it's exciting. But also we're talking about the challenges that exist. The same thing we're talking about on this my path. People see the success on social media. They do not see all the pitfalls, all the downfalls, all the winding roads, right, that it's been. And even still, I'm still fighting, honestly, till this day, to get ample opportunities. And, I think with the great body of work that I have and, experience, from a wide range. So I say all that to say, Bodine, the work, I'm so thankful for the trailblazers. A lot of the work, has been done, but it's not finished. Right, all of us still have to pick up whatever tools and resources that we can clink and climb onto. So one day again, it's equal opportunity. When you still look in those locker rooms, it's still uneven. It's still mostly controlled by white men, if we're being honest, and that's most sports media. Sports again doesn't only look like white men. We're talking about women's sports. We're talking about men's sports. That's again why the beauty of it. So we have to make sure to have accurate stories. And remember, of course, every journalist aims to be objective and unbiased, but we do bring ourselves into our work, right? I'm never going to be separated from being a Black woman in any of the work I do, because that's how I came into this world, and that's how I'm going to go out of this world. So that's the only experience that I can speak to. So in all of my stories and all that I'm writing, I can speak to being the young Black girl watching the Mystics and the Nosebleeds, to seeing them now and how much they've been able to grow, as a team. And, now we'll be on the quest for a new head coach and, new leadership, in that locker room. I know their origin story, but I bring that. So I still have to say, I love where we're going. But again, we can't act blind and put our blinders on and act like we don't see what else is happening around us. As we see media jobs getting cut, that's the other thing, trying to make sure that those Black voices aren't the first ones going, right, and aren't getting cut. And again, getting a fair shot, or if they are getting cut, are they being helped to rebound, right? Are they being helped to pivot and get other jobs, in the industry? My story, Bodine, when I first got into it, essentially I was told there was no space for me to be on air. Everyone kept telling me I had to be behind the scenes. No one wanted to hear me. Now, 10 years later, obviously, I've been able to kick that down, right? And now show the world, that. But it was a lot of work, a lot of hard work, went into that. I had to have a lot of opportunities. Like you said, I held multiple titles now, but I've never worked only one job, because one job was never enough for me to ever prove myself. I've always had to do multiple things and do multiple things well. And that's just kind of been my story. And that's kind of how I've been able to build a brand, based off of that. But I also know that that's not going to be for everybody. I'd love to, when I'm 80 years old, hopefully, God willing, I get there. I don't want the next, 32-year-old Black girl, journalist, professor having to work 4 jobs, to prove herself and make a way, unless she wants to, right? Because there are some overachievers who want to. But I want it to be where she can work that one job, focus on it, because again, that the society has put her in a place where she can succeed, and can prevail. So I say all that to say, like, we're going the right way, right? I'm old enough to, have witnessed, what just happened, in the election with Kamala Harris in politics. And like you said, Jane Kennedy's story, like, it's happening all over. We're I think we're seeing Black women win and find success. But it's not, again, it's not the norm for everyone. And I want to work, Bodine, until it's the norm for everyone to be able to get that success should they put the work in and qualify for the opportunities.
So listen, let's talk about your brand and how you're able to juggle so many roles, right? Because I mean, I got like less than 5 minutes left, and which is not enough to talk about your career. But share with the audience, because there could be a young lady, watching, either on this main line or online somewhere around the world, who is, feeling your story, right? And so, but talk about how you're able to juggle it, because a young girl may think, oh, I don't think I could juggle that schedule. I don't think I could do this, that, and the third all at once. Talk about how you're able to do that and with your brand and keep it going.
My gosh. So it's not for the weary. I will say that. I always share on the back of my computer screen, I got a Lamar Jackson quote: nobody cares, work harder. And that's always my mindset. I can always work harder than I did yesterday. I think for me, why I'm able to balance is honestly, one, I have a great support system around me. People that have known me, that believe in me, that send me positive vibes, my way, that when I'm having a rough day will send me, just motivation. And then two, again, the work ethic. And that, again, comes from the parents. That comes from Germantown, Maryland, where I grew up, in Jackson, Mississippi, where I'd spend my summers, Bodine. All around me, all I saw was hard work from my family. And if something didn't happen, they made a way, right? Like, we were hungry, we found a way to eat. We needed something, my parents found a way. So all in all to say, for me, that will and determination, always having in my head, my parents, that I could do anything that I wanted to do. That's kind of how I feel now. Like, you were never going to limit me. For me, and I think this is my story. It doesn't need to be everyone's story, but you have to do what works for you. One of my great skill sets is time management. I am a planner to the fullest. I put everything in my calendar. I started my morning this morning at 2 a.m. I am not going to be done until I finish a George Washington basketball game at 11. If you count the hours, yes, my sleep schedule is crazy. But luckily, again, I'm able to nap on different days and plan myself that way. But again, when you have a good support system, I think it's all a mindset thing. To me, Bodine, no one can be limited unless you mentally stop yourself. And that's just me, right? I mean, physically, you might be tired, but when I'm tired, if my energy's high, if I'm feeling good, I'm going to get done whatever I need to get done, right? Before I talked to you, I taught an 8 a.m. class. It went fantastic. I like to think I'm the most bubbly and energetic 8 a.m. professor out there, but it's because I want to bring good vibes, right, to my students if they're going to bring good vibes into me. So all I want to say, don't ever let anybody tell you what you can't do, but also know what you can do. My biggest thing is, where's your peace? For me, my peace and my calm is in chaos. And I know that might sound crazy, but that means when I'm not doing multiple things, I feel weird. I feel out of place. So it just doesn't feel right to me. So my calm is when I am doing multiple things, my biggest thing is impact and legacy. So for me, impact and legacy is doing many things, but doing them well. So once I do leave this world, hopefully people will have a lot of good things to say from all the different realms, right, that they know me in, because I'm a giver. Like you said, it's a cancer thing. We're nurturers. We want to support. We want to give back. I think that's what push and drives me. So I think essentially what I'm saying is, find your peace, find your purpose, and your purpose will make time for you. Your purpose will somehow maximize the 24 hours in the day and make them seem like 60. And I promise you it's the truth. But when you have that motivation, when you have that stuff going for you, when you have the right people in your corner, always rooting you on, to me, Bodine, there is nothing that you can't do.
Well, listen, we've come to the end of our program. It sounds like you're having lots of fun. Share briefly and quickly, share with the audience any contact information that you want to share if someone's interested in reaching out to you to be a speaker or a guest or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again so much for having me. This was a blast. You are a phenomenal host. Folks can reach me on my website. It's the easiest way, KelseyNicoleNelson.com. I'm on social media, The Real K Nelson, Facebook and LinkedIn, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. Please, I like people. Send me a note, send me a message, and we will try to make something work. And again, my biggest thing is just bringing joy. I'm all for Black girl joy. So I try to bring joy to everywhere that I can be. Love speaking, love talking, and hopefully making an impact on young lives. So thanks again, Bodine, for having me. This is fun.
We've come to the end of our program. Thank you for your time. Stay tuned. There's more to come on this mainline TV network. Take care.